Hey everybody, hi Lori! Happy Friday evening live tutorial here on the Beading Dream stream at twitch.tv/beadingdream. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for repairing a chain. So, the origin, the reason I'm doing this class is because we've been doing and are still doing, because it's going to take a really long time, a really big silver! Hi Jason! Heather's over there too, she's just not on camera tonight. Oh, we need to post a poll in Discord about who wants Zoom and who wants Freeform tomorrow.
You know, last time I posted a poll, it was overwhelming.
Okay, so then I guess we're going to go with Zoom tomorrow night, starting at 6:30. And anyway, so we're doing a big, okay, silver votes for Zoom, so we shall Zoom. So, anyway. Okay, Lori votes for Zoom. Okay, so 100%. Two of our heavy hitters vote for Zoom, and I think Jason also voted for Zoom. So yes, 100% of the people who are currently chatting have voted for Zoom. So that's pretty much an overwhelming majority. So during our
is tomorrow the one when I would need to start doing?
No, because they had already rescheduled.
Got it.
So during our cleaning and reorganizing, one of our organizers found this chain, which is a sterling silver chain stupid camera, sterling silver chain that Beading Dreams carried a long time ago, like 17 years ago when I bought the store. This was one of the stock chains. And even at that point, isn't it a cool chain, silver? So even at that point, this chain in sterling silver was selling for like $65 a foot. If we were to have something similar today, it would probably be selling for at least 2 or 3 times that, which is why I don't carry this anymore. However, since the universe has gifted me back this chain, I'm super excited, but it gifted it back to me in the form of a necklace that I had made. That wasn't really very attractive, frankly. So I cut the necklace apart, and what I want to do tonight is I want to reassemble this into a continuous length of chain. I know, right? Thanks, universe, for the massive, hi, Corvus, for the massive amount of sterling silver with which you have just gifted me. But it's going to be way easier for me to sell if it's a length of chain that is reasonable rather than these tiny little pieces. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to make new links and I'm going to solder it back together. And hopefully that's going to work. Now, I just want to say from my own experience, unless you are really good with a torch and unless you have a proper acetylene torch with like a 00 tip, do not try to repair tiny, thin chains because you will just end up melting link after link after link after link, and that is not the goal. So I would not recommend using this technique on any chains that are smaller than, say, like 5 or 6 millimeters in diameter for the links. Ask me how I know, because I just destroyed 7 links on a customer's 14 karat gold chain. So unless you've got experience repairing tiny chains, the proper equipment, tiny chains are best left to a professional. And honestly, most of the professionals these days won't even repair the tiny chain with a torch. They'll do it with a laser welder, which would be great. I would love to have a laser welder if I had an extra, 5 square feet of room and an extra $3,000, which I have neither. So tiny chains, best left to the professionals for soldering repairs. You can obviously always wire wrap them together. But big honkin' chains like this are much harder to melt, and so they're going to work much better for this technique. So, first thing I need to do is figure out where all my joins are and how many rings I need to make. So I'm going to be joining everything with 14 gauge rings that are oval, that are hopefully similarly sized to this. They're probably not going to be exactly right, but I want to get as close as possible. But I need to figure out, like, it's like a puzzle, because you see you've got a big link and then 3 small links and then a big link. So like here, I've got 2 small links, so I should be able to make another link and link that onto a big link, if that makes sense. So now I'm going to kind of lay out this chain puzzle, and I'm going to see how it's supposed to go. So this one can go here. So I need a link there, so that's one link I need to make. And then this one can go okay. So there's 2 links there. So I need to make a third one to go here. And then this one, there's another 2 links here. So that's another link I need to make. And then we've got these 2 little bits. And I've got this one link here. So I can link that together. But then I've got 3. So what I'm going to wind up having to do, unfortunately, but also fortunately, is I'm going to wind up having to cut this link here, this link here, and this link here, because if I put another link there, that's going to be 5 links instead of 3. But the good news is, if I cut them with a flush cutter, I can actually reuse and resolder this link and this link, which means that instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 links that I need to make, I only need to make 3. So less work for me, always a fan. So I'm going to start by taking my flush cutters and removing this ring here and this ring here. So I'm just going to take them, and remember when we're going to have to file this, so you don't okay. So that, remember when you're flush cutting thing that I just said, ignore it. We're going to have to file these, so it doesn't really matter. So just cut that, and then grab a plier and just gently twist it open, set that to the side, and then we're going to take this one here as well. So I'm just going to cut that and open it up. And set it to the side. Silvern asked a question, what about this single link on the end? Why not reuse that one? And I definitely could, but I do prefer this. But that's a really good point, Silver. I do prefer this ending on a small link rather than a big link. I think it makes a nice transition to the class. But then that begs the question, why don't I go ahead and reuse these 2 links? And that way I don't have to make any links at all. I will show you how to make one though, just so that you have the technique for making oval links. But good call, Silver. I think I do maybe still need to make one more after this, because I've got 4 and I think I needed 5. So that works out well. Oops, except I'd done, okay, no, I'm good. Okay, so I've got 4 links now that I can recycle, file and recycle and resolder. So that's going to be, let's see. All right, so I actually need 2 here. So that's 2. Got 1 too many here. Oh, duh. If you put it down the right way, the math works better. Okay, so I need 1 here, 1. I need 1 here, 2. This is all together until we get to 1 here, 3. And then 4.
Sharon, I don't think
5.
it actually broke. I think it was cut.
Yeah, 5. So I need 5. It was. So you missed the beginning, Sharon. So we discovered this on our cleaning and reorganizing mission here at the Beading Dreams. And yes, I had actually cut this chain and made it into a necklace with beads in between the cut pieces. But the necklace really, honestly, 15 years later, wasn't very pretty. And so what I would rather do is I would rather have this chain as a single unit of length that I can then sell as a single unit. So the chain did not break. I did cut it to make the necklace. Okay, so 5 links is what I need. I've got 4 recycled links over here, so we just need to make 1, which is amazing. So I've got 14 gauge sterling silver wire, and I just want to make an oval that is approximately the same size as these. Now I realize in the online supply list I put 16 gauge wire. That's because I hadn't gauged the actual wire of my links, but really, if you're going to be making links and soldering them together, you need to choose whatever wire is the same gauge as the existing chain. So it might be 14, it might be 16, it might be 18, it might be 20. You just have to match, like if you want it to be as seamless as possible, you just want to match whatever's there. Okay, so let's make an oval link. So I'm going to take my round nose pliers and I'm going to grab my wire, and then I'm going to do the thing that I always tell you all not to do. I'm going to hold this really, really firmly, and I'm going to wrap my wire around both jaws of my pliers to make an oval. And it's an oval with a little curly Q. We're going to cut that off, but that's the best way to make an oval. And sometimes it's a little egg-shaped, but if you don't point it out, no one's going to notice. So I'm going to flush cut it. Well, I told you, yes. So I'm going to cut that, and then I'm going to cut the other side. And what I'm left with is an oval that is approximately the same size as the ones here. It's not exactly the same. It's a little smaller, but honestly, I don't think that it's going to be incredibly noticeable in the grand scheme of all of our chain. So the only question I have is, will it be big enough to allow the chain to move? So I'm just going to do a quick test with it of opening it up and then taking 2 of my pieces of chain, linking them together, and then closing it all the way like it's going to be soldered, and then just making sure that the chain has enough room to move, and it does. And again, it's smaller, but in the grand scheme of things, it's really not going to be noticeable. So that one does need to be filed. So now we're going to go with the filing. And I'm going to kind of put back together my little chain template here. Nope. That goes there. And that goes there. And that goes here. And then there. And there. Okay. So that's my chain laid out. Again, I realize you can't see it all on the camera, but after I file these, I'm going to start linking these together so I don't have to just keep messing with it on my work surface. So I'm going to grab my friend the file, and we'll start with the one that I actually cut. So for those of you who have it's been a minute since you've seen a soldering tutorial. So what I need to do with my file is I need to smooth down these edges. You can see barely that there's a little burr in the center of that. a little line, and that's because the way that cutters work, even flush cutters, is they pinch, 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 pinch down the metal until it basically snaps off. So we cannot ever get good contact for soldering if that little burr is in there. So we want to make that go away. So we're just going to take our file and we're just going to file our ring. And it's actually, I mean, I'm going to do it again on the camera for you, but if I were actually doing this for myself, I would hold it up to my face so that I could actually see where my file was going on the metal. It's one of the things that I see a lot with new students is they're just like, and you can't do that. You have to actually look at it and see what it's doing in order to do it correctly. So I'm going to switch to the other side now. And then we're going to look at it, and it looks pretty good. So then I'm going to take that, and I'm just going to pick a place to put it. I think I'm going to take what's close to the center back, and I'm just going to link that, my two pieces of chain together, the way that I've laid them out, and then we're going to close it up. And since we're going to be soldering this, we need to make sure to close it up so that the sides are touching and there's no space in between. Because if there is space in between, the solder is not going to bridge that gap. I'm sorry, I just need to, there we go. Okay, so there's my closed ring that's ready for soldering. So now I'm going to do the same thing with my recycled links. I'm going to file them so that the edges will close nicely, and then I'm going to use them to link together all of the remaining pieces of my chain. So this is another thing that, knowing how to do this kind of gives you, is when you're dealing with those super expensive chains, as long as they're sterling, even if you cut them up to use them for something, there's a good chance that if you decide you hate the something, that you can put them back together again. This needs a little bit more. And remember, your jeweler's files bite on the push, not the pull, so we want to push, and then you can either lift it up, bring it back, and push forward again, which is my preferred technique when teaching just because it's pretty obvious. What a lot of professional jewelers will do is just lighten up and just kind of slide it back and then push forward again. So they're not actually cutting metal on the backstroke, but they're not wasting motion either. Okay, so this one is done, so I'm going to use it to link these two pieces together. So again, I've got nice contact there, so that's going to be an easy joint to solder. And then we're going to just do that for the rest of these. So I'm going to go ahead and file all of these three pretty quickly, and then we're going to link everything together. And what I actually should do before I get too far is I should grab a marker. I should mark these links, because otherwise they're going to be near impossible to find. So let's see. Like, I should have marked them when I attached them, because I'm having trouble finding them even now. I do have an idea for this chain, Corvus. I want to sell it to someone. Which one is your hairdresser? Is it Turbo or Stanley or one of the others? This is going to take me a minute. Stanley. Stanley's a good name for a hairdresser, I think. So the lesson here is literally mark them as you're putting them on, because now I'm having to waste time trying to find the two that I just put on. The one that's smaller should be easy to find, but the one that I made from the recycled link, okay, so this is the one that I made. So I'm just gonna Sharpie it in black just so that I can see which one it is. So I just have a nice black Sharpie mark there. So then that means that the other one is somewhere over here. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to put a nice black Sharpie mark on that as well. Trust me, you'll thank yourself later. Okay, so now that I've done this, I'm going to go ahead and file my other three. It's just, my goal is just plain chain Corvus that I can sell by the foot or as a completed chain, but I don't have any personal plans for it. I'm just trying to get it retail ready. Because again, I'm going to have an easier time selling it as a longer piece than as a bunch of smaller pieces. I don't always have a plan. In fact, very rarely do I have a plan. So while I'm doing this, just a quick reminder, that we are doing two things next week. We are, first of all, going to be redoing the Affair of the Diamond Necklace Buttonless podcast because we had so many issues with our internet last Wednesday. We're going to be doing that at 6:30 p.m. Okay, because Heather and I don't really want to wait around for 2 hours after closing to start. So the buttonless redo is going to, and I'll post this on Discord if I can remember, is going to be 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday. And then we are going to be doing live merchandise 50% off sales at 6:30 p.m. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So that is our slightly modified streaming schedule for next week. Okay, so then now I got another one to connect. So got there. And then I'm going to connect that to these. Close it up, and this time, before I let go my pliers, I'm going to mark it. Yes, you can listen to all of the, thank you, Corvus. You can listen to all of the episodes of the Button List on iTunes and Spotify. Okay, so 2 more to file. And look, Corvus put up the podcast links. Aren't y'all amazed at how amazing she is? Riveting, isn't it? Oh no, wait, that's another class. You succeed in being amazing, Corvus. Well, hello, person on the FB side. Welcome in. Okay, so I've got another one. So once again, I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to grab my chain. So see, it's looking much more like an actual chain instead of a bunch of pieces of stuff. So I'm going to put that on there. And then I'm down to my little snippets. So I'm going to put that on there. I'm going to close it up. All right, and last one. Hi, Keiko. Okay, so since we had Keiko drop in, I will go ahead and do this one on the camera. So what I've done per Silver's excellent advice is I've actually cut and I'm reusing some of the links of this chain, the ones that didn't fit in the pattern. So this is my last one of the links that I cut. So I do have to file it to make sure that I can solder it. So I'm just gonna grab my file and I'm just gonna file one edge until it's flat. And then flip it around and file it again on the other side so the other side's flat. And since I didn't flush cut both sides of this because I wanted to keep as much material as possible, one side's going to be pointy, so it's going to require a little bit more filing than the other side. So this is the pointy side. All right, so I'm going to make my last connection. So I'm going to take this chain and this link and just put them together, and then I want to make sure to close that completely. Again, if I don't do that, it's not going to solder. So I want to make sure I feel the contact between those two sides, and then I'm going to take my Sharpie and I'm going to mark that as well. And this is just to help me determine which links I actually need to solder so that I don't have to, like I did a second ago, take a whole bunch of time trying to find them. So I'm done with my file, that goes away. I am done with my pliers, they can go out of the way as well. So now I need my soldering stuff. So it's all your basic soldering setup, nothing weird or crazy tonight. So just your soldering board, and I am going to pick transfer, so I need a solder pick. You're going to need a tweezers for picking up things that are hot and positioning things. You're going to need to move your mouse so that this nonsense doesn't happen again. I need a lighter because the igniter on my torch is broken. You're going to need flux. And then the last thing that you need is solder. And since this is, okay, so we've talked about heat sinks before. So basically, since metal conducts heat, all of the metal in your project is basically all interlinked. And any metal that is not being heated by your torch is actively pulling heat away from your torch. And this is a big old heat sink, y'all. Like, this is, for your butane torches, this is a lot of metal. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and use the lowest density solder that we have. So for me, that's going to be extra easy sterling silver solder. It's not going to really matter. These links are very strong on their own. Like, I could wear this in this state with the rings. Hi, Ace! You missed some comedy last night. We had a What the Frank on the stream live, and things went places. And then they just off the cliff. It's good to see you. So anyway, this is sturdy enough that I could wear it right now. The soldering is just for insurance and because the rest of the links are soldered, so if I'm going to sell this chain, I want it all to be consistent. Okay, so extra easy solder. I'm going to need my wire cutters back to cut solder. And I should probably put something under this so that it doesn't scorch my work surface, even though I already have a scorch stitchy on it. All right, so, and let me just check and make sure I'm still in focus, because I'm pretty sure I just changed the focal distance with that. Why is the focus such a pain in the ass? Nope. Alright. Let's just zoom this in a little bit so you can see a little better what I'm doing. Alright, so now it's time to solder. Again, move your mouse away. So we had, oops, no, that needs to stay there. We had 5 links, so theoretically, we need 5 pieces of solder. Now, I am notorious for losing pieces of solder, so I am going to cut more than 5. I'm going to cut about 7. Also, I want this to be away from that, which means you, camera, need to come out. Nope, you stay. Stay. Just going to keep drifting backwards. Alright, I can make that work. I have some strands of beads like hanging on this camera, and I really do not want to like murder them. Apparently they're just going to all fall down. So yeah, there's that. Okay, go here for now. Right? Listens like a cat. No, stop it. Exactly like a cat. Stop it! The beads are being like a cat now too. Like, can we please just behave? Things? Apparently no. The answer is definitively no. The things cannot or will not behave. So, alright, well that's at least a little bit better. Just don't set this on fire. Let's not set anything on fire except for the torch flame. Alright, so I'm going to cut about 7. Well, I had the camera position, put the flame too close to some other things that I don't want to set on fire. So I was trying to reposition it. It was being only moderately cooperative. So I'm going to cut, I'm going to put them over here because I'm going to pick transfer them. 7 pieces of solder. Gives me 2 extra. Okay, so there are my 7 pieces of solder. I'm going to keep my solder handy just in case I need more. So now I'm going to start soldering these links one by one. So I'm going to find the first mark that I have that's closest to this end. Alright, and it happens to be this one right here. Alright, so what I want to do is I want to set this up so that ideally my joint, which is right there, is not touching anything else. There's no way really to have your link not touching anything else, but you want your joint not to be. And then I'm going to be really careful to try and place my solder precisely on my joint so that it doesn't run around, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to solder these 3 links together. We want to solder the one link closed independently of all the other links so that it still moves freely like a chain. So I'm going to take my flux, I'm going to flux my joint, I'm also going to flux all my little solder bits over here, which you can't see because they're off camera. And now it's time to light the torch. And again, this torch should be self-igniting. My igniter's just broken. Okay, so I'm going to heat this so that my flux kind of fizzes up a bit and becomes kind of crusty white. And then I'm going to come over here, heat one of my pieces of solder until it turns into a ball. And then scoop it up onto my solder pick. So see, now there's a ball of solder there. And I'm going to take my heat, I'm going to put it on that joint, and I'm going to drop that solder off on that joint. So you may notice right now that I'm doing not the stuff that I have told you to do when we're soldering. I'm not heating the whole thing, I'm just heating the joint. And that's because heating the whole thing, there we go, and there my solder flowed, bam bam, one link soldered. Because heating the whole thing, since it's so big and long, by the time you heat the whole thing, by the time you get to the end, the beginning will be cold again. So we skip heating the whole thing when it's something this big. All right, so it looks like that worked. Now, at this point, y'all, this is hot, so don't touch it. Even though it's long, there's still heat down at the end of it, so, be careful. So I'm looking for my next mark. It should be, nope, not you. Also, don't drop it on your workstation. It's still hot. Okay, so I'm searching for my next mark. Exactly, no touchy will be ouchy. Sylvan gives good advice. It's actually pretty cool at this end. There we go. Okay, here's the next one, which is the one I made. Okay, and this part of the chain is actually pretty cool. Okay, so we're going to count these, and then we're going to see if I have to go back and find any that I missed. So this is 2 of 5. Taking your own advice is hard. Okay, so this is 2 of 5, and this is the link that I actually made. It's smaller, which is going to make it slightly more difficult to not solder it to everything else, but I think I can do it. There we go. So part of the key, again, is getting it set so that the joint is not touching any of the rest of your chain. And I don't think I can solder with my glasses on at this point. So light your torch. And I'm going to go, I forgot to flux. I'm going to flux that. My solder's already been fluxed, so I'm just going to heat that up a bit so my solder goes white. I'm going to grab another piece, so my flux goes white, and I'm going to grab a piece of solder from over here, ball it up, scoop it onto my pick. And I just flung that one I don't know where. This is why I always cut extra pieces of solder. Okay, that should be nice. I've got solder on my pick, and then I'm gonna heat, and I'm just gonna, and then there we go. And I'm just gonna drop that solder off onto my joint, and then I'm gonna heat, and I'm kind of going back and forth because I want to make sure that the solder doesn't flow to one side or the other. Just concentrate on your joint until that solder flows and joins that together. Bingo. Okay, so that's 2. Got 3 more to find. It's like, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Okay, so I gotta find 3 more. Okay, so a couple of things that are putting a hitch in my giddy up here. Number 1 is that I should have marked both sides. Like I should have marked much more intensely on my links. But number two is that heat actually evaporates Sharpie. So I should have probably marked them in some other way, like with a twist of wire. So, you know, live and learn. Also, my solder pick is now stuck in my chain. That's not ideal in any way. Get out. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm looking for my other 3 joints because I had 5. So, and I've done 2. So, since it appears my Sharpie marks have gone away, we are going to waste time looking for the joints that I need to solder, which is exactly what I said I wasn't going to do. But, you know, sometimes life throws you a curveball. All right, here's one. Okay, so I found number 3, and this needs to be closed better. So I can see on this side, I don't know if you can see on my 3rd joint, but there's space. You can see light in between those 2 sides. That's not going to work. So we need to make that completely closed. Okay, that'll work. All right, so we're going to set this up like we did our other joints so that our solder point is not touching the rest of our chain. We are going to flux this joint right here, and that joint's not even on camera, is it? There it is. All right, and we're going to do the same thing. Like it's the same thing 5 times. Or however many times you need to repair the chain that you're repairing. So once again, heating my joint so that my flux starts to burn off. Then I'm gonna grab some solder on my pick. Alright, so the extra easy doesn't always come off in a nice little ball, unfortunately. Sometimes it comes off as a weird blob. That's just kind of a thing. Okay, that's better. So now I'm going to heat my joint, and I'm going to touch my solder to my joint until it comes off my pick. The key to getting it off your pick is make your metal hotter than your solder pick. That means you got to aim. And then we're going to heat until that solder flows down and into that joint, just like it's doing now. And look at that. Okay, so joint 3 is done. That means we've got 2 more to go. Yes, I know. I need a new soldering board because this one has definitely seen better days. All right, so I still need to find 2 more joints. And I think did I find one? Haha, I found a Sharpie mark. Okay, so this is going to be number 4. That one right there. So at this point, you should be pretty cognizant of how this needs to get set up. Okay, I found it and I lost it. How is that even possible? It was right there. Y'all. That one. Wow. Well, that's impressive, isn't it? All right. So I found number 4 and then, there it is. Okay. Because I was looking in the wrong place. All right. So here's number 4. And the reason that I got confused is it's not an end link, it's a middle link. So again, we're going to just set this up the way that we have been. I'm going to flex it. I'm going to, yeah, okay, so it's right there. So I'm going to move it a little bit more on camera. And then, do I still have solder? Yes, I do. Okay, well, we're going to go for it. I'm going to heat that. I'm going to grab some solder. Alright, and again, I'm going to heat our link and drop our solder off. Alright, so that one's done. So I think that only leaves me one more, right? That was number 4. That would be very logical, Lori. Probably why I didn't do it that way, because I'm never logical. But what Lori said, which is actually extremely logical, is to the only reason that I would say attaching all the joints together, if you had a larger work surface than I do, and you could have your chain laid out, because once again, it's like a puzzle. You've got to, figure out how you're going to put it back together. So if I had a larger work surface and I could have the chain laid out on a board or something off to the side, then it would absolutely make sense to attach one joint, solder it, either quench it or let it cool, and then attach the next joint. Since I don't have anywhere to do that here, I was hooking them together so that I didn't forget how they went. So each method has, its own particular hiccups. Lori's method being that like it's really better if you have a little extra space. Mine, in that if you don't have any extra space, cool, but then you've got to hunt for your joints. So okay, but I only have to find one more. Okay, right? It is only one more, I think. I know this is riveting. Again, that's a different class. Haha, I found it! I'm victorious! Last joint. Every time I put my glasses on my head, my hair just gets crazier and crazier. Because the nose pieces on my glasses, they catch in my hair when I put them on my head. Which is why I tend to put them down my nose, but I know that looks incredibly ridiculous. So I'm trying to break myself of that habit. Okay, last joint. Flex it. Make sure there's still solder over there, which there is. And here we go. For my hair, or because I think my hair at this point is just kind of a bird's nest. Alright, got my ball of solder. I'm going to heat, and then I'm going to drop it off, and then I'm just going to heat until it flows into the joint. Also, one of the keys when you're doing a chain is don't use giant pieces of solder. Because if you use this piece of solder that's too big, it's just going to flow around and solder everything together that you don't want soldered together. Come on, you. Alright. See, no, that's not the way I want you to go. Go this way. Alright, so this piece of solder is being a pain. So I'm going to try and pull it back across the joint. This may or may not work. Yes! Did you see that? Did you see where it just jumped across the joint? Again, as I have said multiple times before, this is because solder flows towards heat. Now, when you're working on a project that is... Oh, got it. Yes. Fascinating. But then I can't make a joke about riveting class. But so when you're dealing with a piece that's this tiny, like that is the size of these little links, using the torch to direct the solder, if you're using one of these, is more difficult because, again, if I had an acetylene torch with a 00 torch tip, that flame is so tiny and so precise and yet so hot because it's acetylene that it's much easier to use that heat to direct your solder. You know, this, even though when you're working on a larger project, it feels like you're, painting with a tiny brush. When you're working on a tiny project, it feels like you're painting with a giant brush, if that metaphor makes any sense. Or I guess it's a simile. But anyway, so you can't always use the heat to direct the solder just because the area you're working in is so small. So I'm very excited that that actually worked, and I was able to get the solder to jump across the joint, because that doesn't always work. But what I have now is I have one continuous, probably 20-inch piece of 20 or 24-inch piece of chain. So that's going to be a really nice sale for me whenever that sells. Now it's all back together. It's all soldered. Now you probably noticed that the joints that I soldered look different than the original chain in that they've changed color. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and throw this in the tumbler. Let it tumble overnight. What that's going to do is it's going to normalize the color of all of this, and then if I so choose, I can dunk it in some liver of sulfur to get this patina back in the crevices, and then after that I will need to polish it back up so that the rest of it is shiny. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw it in the tumbler and I'm going to see how it turns out, and I will check back with you guys on that tomorrow during Zoom. So that is it. That is repairing a chain. And also, one might ask, why is that worth it? Why not just get a new chain? And the answer is, when when the prices of chain have inflated as much as they have, replacing this chain would cost me 2 to 3 times what it cost me to buy it. So it's...
I'm not even sure they make it anymore.
Well, probably not, because it's so gosh darn expensive. So yeah, because silver is really expensive now. And the other thing about silver being really expensive now that Heather just pointed out is that not only are us retailers not necessarily financially able to carry a chain like this, but the manufacturers aren't dumping the money into making a chain like this anymore because it's so expensive, and it's stock that's just going to probably sit around and no one can really afford to have dead stock just sitting around these days. So it's worth it to me to repair something like this because there's no way for me to replace it at anything close to a reasonable cost, and I can hopefully resell it and make money over and above what I originally paid for it. That's not true for every chain. Sometimes it is easier to buy a new chain. And like I said, the fine, tiny chains, just unless you are supremely confident in your skills, just don't do it, because it's going to be bad news bears. But hopefully this tutorial helped you with how to repair a chain. This is also, how to just link things together generally. If you're linking together sterling silver components, the technique remains the same with the either making of the links or recycling of the links, cutting them, filing them, etc. Another thing you can do if you do have a scrap of chain lying around is and you need to link something else together, you can actually cut the links of your existing, like if you've got a 2-inch piece of chain, you're like, I'm never going to do anything with this. You can cut those links, file them, and then use them to link something else together. So at this point, it's all about kind of recycling and reusing. So I'm going to go throw this in the tumbler, and I will, again, like I said, I'll check back in with you guys tomorrow night on Zoom about how it's looking. But for now, thank you so much for hanging out with us on the Beading Dreams stream on this Friday evening, Fire Friday tutorial. Don't forget, tomorrow night we will be doing Zoom. Therefore, we will not be on Twitch, we will not be on Facebook, we will not be on YouTube. We will be on Zoom. There should be a Zoom link in Discord. I will make sure that's up to date because Zoom did some weird stuff last week or the week before. And you can also email us at beadingdreamsdallas@gmail.com if you need the Zoom info and you don't have it. So Zoom will start at 6:30 tomorrow. We'll run until approximately 8:30. And I will look forward to seeing all of your beautiful faces then. So again, thank you so much for hanging out with us on twitch.tv/beadingdream. And next week, we will be back on this channel for 6:30 podcast, and then 6:30 sale on Wednesday, 6:30 sales on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So everyone have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye!